Ladies and gentlemen, if we could get everybody seated. If everybody could take their seats and squeeze in if there are some free seats, or wave your hand if you have a free seat. Thank you. Over the next 7 days, a celebration of our 10th anniversary, we will look forward 10 years and imagine possibilities for a decade hence. What will matter most to us?
The reason it matters that people know so much information about us is that information is power. The more information that somebody has about you, the more power they have.
Those creative abilities can be enhanced. They can be enhanced by things like imagining, learning to put oneself in another person's place, which is a surprising deficit in an awful lot of people.
The CIA doesn't really have to gather data on most Americans. They can just look at your Facebook page. We seem to be okay with giving away lots of personal data over the internet, but when we think about a drone flying over us, somehow it violates our internal sense of right and wrong.
We face real challenges for finding cures to disorders like Alzheimer's disease and cancer. And biotech holds huge promise, including things like personalized medicine. But we're not going to get there unless we're willing to take more risks, both in the academic, innovative world and also financially.
To wish to exclude people from being American is the perpetually doomed strategy. 40 million of us, out of the 300 million or so Americans, we're not born in America. And it's the best thing about this country and the thing that sometimes causes most of its heartache.
The world may look very different 10 years from now. We're all living on this earth together, and so in terms of the global commons, climate change, trafficking of human beings, drug and crime cartels, nuclear proliferation, terrorism, all these transnational issues, environmental issues, we have to work with the Chinese. We must work with them. We can't afford to adopt a containment-like attitude.
The Arab Spring was about citizens asking something different from their government. But what we really needed is for citizens to ask different things of each other. Rather than a new social contract, before that we need a new social covenant, a new understanding between people about how they want to live together.
Fresh water is quickly becoming one of the greatest challenged resources we have on the planet. We can live without oil, we can't live without water.
There is no doubt that over the course of the next 10 years, renewable energy across the board will be fully competitive with traditional forms of energy, fossil fuel-based energy, without subsidies.
The fate of the city is the fate of the planet.
Over the next 10 years, our communities and neighborhoods are going to face very real, hard challenges. We need to find new ways of weaving art and culture and creativity into the solution.
If we work at it, we can ramp up businesses serving the growing middle class all over the world and use technology to get people the preparation they need.
Post-secondary education doesn't fulfill its economic role to help young people and adults become successful workers. They'll also fail in their larger cultural and political missions.
Human beings are story-driven creatures. We measure our days, our past, our present, and our future by the stories we tell. If we don't have any stories, then we are nothing. Stories are the stepping stone for policy change, social engagement, and really changing the world. So storytelling is the currency of our lives.
Thank you. Thank you all, and welcome to the 10th Annual Aspen Ideas Festival. I'm Walter Isaacson of the Aspen Institute, and to those of you who are first-timers here, I hope you enjoy yourself and understand why we're so excited about what we do here. Kitty Boone, thank you for pulling this together. We really appreciate it. Kitty has a wonderful staff. I could single them all out, but this year I'm just going to single out one because Deborah Murphy has been outstanding in some great logistics. Those of you I didn't single out, next year I'll single out somebody else. I always try to start myself, as will everybody else here, with an idea I've been playing with over the past year. And the idea I've been playing with over the past year is the idea of collaboration. Because we biographers, which is what I do in my spare time when Kitty's not bossing me around at the Aspen Institute, we biographers operate under a conceit that isn't totally true, which is that certain people sit in garrets and garages and they change the world as individuals. But most creativity in this world comes from collaboration. It comes from people working together as teams, and there is a creative teamwork that happens. Whether it's the first computer, there's always been a debate over what was the first computer. There were two of them that were built about the same time. One was by a professor in Iowa who did it all alone in the basement of a physics building at Iowa State. And the other was by a great team that did it at the University of Pennsylvania. It turned out that even though they both finished at the same time, it was only the ones that worked as a team that could get things done, that could actually get the punch cards to actually work, the burners to actually burn the holes. It was a team of very diverse people that included material scientists as well as theorists. The same thing happened at Bell Labs when they're trying to do the transistor. Everybody's doing it in different places, but only at a place like Bell Labs that had greasy-fingered pole climbers working with theoretical physicists, working with material scientists. All of that idea of rubbing elbows together helped create that creativity. And the other thing that showed was that it helps to be in the same place. Despite what people say about virtual collaboration and collaboration online and Skyping and all, it's when people actually sit together, work together, finish each other's sentences, sit on Anderson Park on one of those hills, and meet somebody from a different background with a different way of looking at things. That's the spark of creativity that really occurs. It's happened for the past 60 years in the United States, made us an engine of creativity. It was partly a collaboration amongst government, the academy, universities, and industry that created everything from the computer to the internet. That collaboration, too, is breaking down a bit. As Kathleen Sebelius said earlier today, the notion that we're not investing in research, that the government and universities and corporations aren't working together to put as much into pure research. Likewise, the notion that arts and sciences have to be pulled together. That's something that's in the DNA of the Aspen Institute. It was founded 60 years ago on this campus with a music festival. And if you listen hard enough, in about an hour, you'll hear the beginning of the Egmont Overture. That's what the music festival is doing. I see little Buck here, our artist in residence. Welcome. But tonight, later in the Meadows reception at the bar, you'll see the slam poets and other people working with Little Buck. We try to tie the arts, the sciences with the Aspen Center for Physics, and the humanities together. That's what this was all about. And certainly it's a collaboration with all the people we've worked with over the years. Our sponsors, EY and Booz Allen, I think, have been there for 10 years for us, and the entire Atlantic team. And if I'm talking about collaboration, it really does lead me to the introduction of the person I'm about to introduce, because the collaboration we've had for 10 years that started with just a handshake is with the Atlantic Media Company and with David Bradley himself. Because David is such a kind and polite person that as we get all worked up about this, we get infused by the kindness and politeness of David. And I think, I'm not sure he was of this planet born. He is so kind and polite. There's something mysterious. I think maybe he's a visitor from a different, the Edwardian age. He's a time traveler. He comes out of a novel like The Last Gentleman, some Walker Percy fictional character. But then you realize that he's not only kind and polite and collaborative in this sort of eerie sort of way, but it's because it's who he is. It comes right from his soul, and I think it infuses all of us to be that way. Some of you, there's something kind of interesting that we're plotting here. James Bennett actually suggested it. I think he wanted, he may have his own rationale for this. But I see Senator George Mitchell, who was our envoy on the Palestinian-Israeli issue, and having done it with the Irish question, said, I'm just going to out-listen them. Well, that was a little bit harder this time around. Some of you know that Martin Indyk, a close friend of the Aspen Institute, just resigned today as the Palestinian-Israeli envoy. Some of you heard, I see Sally Oren, but heard Michael Oren and Jeff Goldberg. We have a new theory that David Bradley is so kind and polite. He is going to be our next envoy to solve the Palestinian-Israeli question, because they're just not going to be able to resist. I mean, I was reading Secretary Clinton's book. She's coming later and such an interviewer. And she had a whole pages on Richard Holbrooke, this force of nature. But even that didn't work. So I think the theory we're going to have in the future is we're just going to polite and kind them to death. And they're going to feel guilty at not coming to any resolution. So with that, let me introduce the person who has been our collaborator for the 10 years, David Bradley.
This is so awkward for me. I have 3 pages of an angry diatribe that I was going to deliver. So I just want to thank you, and our next speaker will be. So on behalf of The Atlantic, its writers, its editors, its publishing staff, I too want to welcome you here. And if you'll allow me, I want to offer 2 more personal sentiments. Here's the first. This is the 10th year of the partnership between the Aspen Institute and The Atlantic. And I know something now that I didn't know at the outset, which is that one of the privileges was going to be much more personal, and that was being able to watch Walter Isaacson from a few feet away. Walter is fantastic on the global or the national stage, but he is even better in a room of 6, or a room of 4, or a room of 2 people. At the Atlantic, my gift is seeing the gifts in other people. I'd rather have my own gift, but I'm really good at seeing gifts in other people, especially people with extreme talent. And I have never seen, as to the thing that the Aspen Institute sought for in Walter, the original creation and the original idea, a man of his equal. I think it's possible they have found in this man the best man on the planet to do this extraordinary job. And we all sit here today with hundreds of thousands of miles behind us in the last 24 hours because we came to see something that Walter Isaacson produced. It's a privilege to see it in a grand scale, and it's a real privilege to stand beside it for 10 years. Walter, thank you very much. How was that? Was that eerie enough? Okay, good. The second thing I wanted to say is a little bit lighter. Kath and I just love being here with you for this festival. This festival, and actually this day, demarks the beginning of summer for us. So we're really glad you're here for the festival, and let's let the summer begin. You know that that which I own is a 19th century long-form literary magazine. This is not exactly the next California gold rush. But you can't imagine the number of people who still want to be writers, who come to the Atlantic just begging for any kind of job. Kath and I are staying at the Little Nell Hotel, and a gentleman, a very nice gentleman named Eric, came up and stopped me and said he had self-possession, he had some dignity about him, the conversation was fine, but it turned, and then he began to, plea is too strong, but he began to really pitch that he should work for the Atlantic. And I don't know if he's joking or not, but he said, I will do any job at all. I will do ad sales, I will do home delivery on my bicycle, whatever you want me to do. I had to go somewhere, so I finally had to break it off. And I turned to him and I said, Congressman Cantor. I don't have time for this right now. I'll be back at 5. Why don't we get a cup of tea? It's wonderful to see Walter here. Walter has, of necessity, been up on his sort of a recluse for the last few months. Walter and Kathy own a beautiful mountaintop villa, which is just off the backside of campus. You go by the stone pillars and the German shepherds, and there's a private road that goes up to the top. And for the better part of 2014, he has been locked away there, laboring and writing. I don't know if you know about the unforgiving deadline that Walter is facing now. In a remarkable tribute to him, Walter has been asked to write the authorized Third Testament of the Bible. This is the first time in 2,000 years that the Lord has updated the story. So come September, you're going to be able to read the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Walter Testament. And I'm pleased to announce today that the Atlantic is going to be hosting the book launch party. It'll be in September. It's going to be on the Sea of Galilee. And here's a more special announcement still. The book party will be sponsored by the Catholic Church and by Booz Allen Hamilton. So what's the news here on the Institute campus since we were last convened? Well, let me just tell you this week's news. I think you know that there are 2 sessions to each of the Ideas Festival. And you may know that what Walter and I do is we go through the list of all the people coming, and we take everyone we like, and we put them in the first session. We love the first session. The second session, not so much. So what I want to do is share a secret with you that's really just for you. That is that this is not actually the opening, not exactly the opening. Since the beginning of the Ideas Festival 10 years ago, we've had the discipline of conducting a full dress rehearsal 2 days before the actual opening. So we fly in all 250 of the journalists and speakers 2 days ahead. We had them here 2 days ago. We show them the classrooms, we show them the stages that they'll be on, we show them which chairs they'll be in for the panel discussion. We do sound check and light check. We let them rehearse their remarks. So by the time the curtain goes up, which is really right now, every line of argument, every response, every joke, every wardrobe change, it has all been rehearsed. And I think it's fair to say that the only actual, true word, comment, speech across the whole of the week is what I'm telling you right here. So I'm a little bit off script, but I want to tell you about the chaos that we've just been through. Thinking through this week's dress rehearsal, we missed an important new fact. A new fact this year that turned out to have a lot of bearing on our 250 speakers when they came for the dress rehearsal. Many of our speakers are baby boomers that came of age in the 60s and 70s. And what has changed this year from last year is Colorado's authorization or legalization of recreational marijuana use. Oh my. $250 Type A speakers, many of whom I think never tried marijuana in their youth, catching up in our golf carts, racing across our campus. Oh, Madeleine Albright. Oh, Speaker Gingrich. It began quietly enough on Wednesday when Walter heard word of some disturbance, and he called down to Kitty and me and asked if we would come on campus and check it out. And what we found at the beginning were reasonably innocent problems. Many of the speakers had mixed up their assigned assignments, the topics they were to speak on. Who knew that former Pakistani President Pervez Musharraf had been released from prison? But Kitty came across Andrew Ross Sorkin interviewing Pervez Musharraf on the subject of why women can't have it all. It's because they're women, explained President Musharraf. There's kind of a sweet scene here in Greenwald Pavilion. Bob Schieffer, who absolutely did not partake, and I don't think knew anyone else was partaking, was trying to lead a panel discussion with the radical right. And he was interviewing, among others, Grover Norquist. And Grover Norquist was responding to some question. Here's what Grover Norquist said. In my heart, Bob, I've never really been an absolutist on taxes. We need a balanced approach that limits entitlement spending while demanding the wealthy pay their fair share. Then Norquist turned to the NRA's Wayne LaPierre and said, Wayne, can you pass me a brownie? Wayne said, sorry, man, they're all gone. But I just want to add on to what you said. You can take the Second Amendment way too far, too. I always thought we need to balance the legitimate gun interests of the sportsman with a sensible plan to keep guns out of the hands of criminals. Bob Schieffer responded, what is wrong with you people? Across campus, Vice President Gore was insisting on delivering all 90 minutes of his remarks on global warming to a music festival tent of 3 stagehands. It was a small audience, but I can't tell you how convicted they were by the Vice President's remarks. Just a word to the wise, if you find yourself in conversation with our stagehands, don't let them get started on personal carbon footprints. And then oddly, Drew Faust, the president of Harvard, decided to staff the registration desk where the pass holders go to pick up their tickets. And apparently, Drew admitted a record low of 5.8% of pass holders who came for their tickets. So on behalf of the Institute, I want to apologize to the other 94.2% of you whose registrations Drew rejected. And for those of you that Drew put on the waiting list, I think you know this already. You're never really getting in. As the afternoon turned to evening, the mood began to mellow. The speakers stretched out on blankets on the lawn out front of Aspen Meadows restaurant. Very quietly, a discreet motorcade bringing President Clinton, Mrs. Clinton, Secretary Clinton, arrived on the circular loop up there out front of the lawn. And for an instant, that handsome, happy, genial face of President Clinton came out of the car. And then an arm reached in from the dark interior and pulled him back in. And Kitty says she heard a woman's voice saying, "We're making hard choices, Bill." As the mood continued to mellow, I noticed something very interesting. I noticed that Ariana's accent began to lift. I don't know how many of you knew that Ariana's not actually Greek. She's an Army brat. She grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, went to UT Austin. She did junior year abroad in Athens. It seemed that Kitty and I had the situation pretty much under control until around 9 o'clock, when suddenly 250 speakers, as if one, became ravenously hungry. And one of the speakers reminded the crowd that one of this year's festival sponsors is Pepsi Frito-Lay. So 250 speakers started surging across the campus in search of the Pepsi pavilion. And while they were searching, a handful broke off and set a bonfire on Pepsi lawn. And soon all of the speakers had joined them, and they were singing and dancing around the bonfire. And you know when a pot party has gone too far, when it's Richard Branson who says, people, let's get a grip on ourselves here. And then Branson did something really interesting. He stood up on a chair and he took out his personal Bible. And he remonstrated the now silent throng with these words from Exodus 32. Now when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people assembled about Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us a god who will go before us." Aaron said to them, "Tear off the gold rings which are in the ears of your wives and bring them to me." He took this from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made it into a golden calf. And the people sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play. And Moses turned, and he went down from the mountain with the 2 tablets. It came about as soon as Moses came near the camp that he saw the calf and the dancing, and Moses' anger burned. And just as Richard Branson finished the reading, someone in the crowd shouted out, look up at Walter and Kathy's house." And they all looked, and there in the pitch black dark of the mountain, they saw a lone figure with a torch wending his way down the mountain. And then he was among them, and it was Walter. And his book was finished. And peace came across the Roaring Fork Valley and across all of Aspen. And that's the week we've been through, waiting for you to come celebrate with us the 10th anniversary of the Aspen Ideas Festival. So it's my privilege to introduce to you the fact that we will now have 9 people bring up in seriatim one big idea. And just by luck of the draw, the first of them happens to be a personal friend. That is Tom Wilson, who's the chairman and CEO of Allstate.
Wow. Following the incredibly articulate David Bradley is daunting at best. David Bradley, one more time. That was fabulous. I was mesmerized. Great. So, well, good afternoon. As David said, I'm the chairman, president, and CEO of Allstate. And I've been listening to consumers' voices my entire professional life. And they've been clearly saying that the economic path we are on is not working. Americans want some simple things. They want the opportunity for a meaningful job, which enables them to enjoy the benefits of their hard work while being safe. We could achieve all of these if leaders would embrace a new economic vision that is based on putting people first. This people first vision has 3 parts: more education, more economic freedom, and a better national security program. Put people first by starting public education earlier in life and making it available throughout our lives. A 10-year plan to increase spending by $300 billion a year, that's $1,000 a person, by giving federal government grants to local communities and investing more in technology would make that a reality. Old school agricultural policies educated us from 6 to 18. New school is in session from 2 to 65. Put people first by giving Americans more economic freedom by lowering the multitude of taxes we pay: sales, Social Security, payroll, and income taxes. Reducing taxes will encourage hard work and raise consumption, which means more jobs. Old economic plans create jobs by using tax cuts for corporations to drive industrial policy. This plan puts personal tax reductions ahead of corporate tax reform. Having people work 3 to 4 months a year just to pay their taxes is a modern-day equivalent of being in debtor's prison. These first 2 parts of the vision require money, obviously, until the programs start to work. And at the same time, we all want national security so we're safe. We can be safer and reduce defense spending. First, as we're currently seeing throughout the world, the basic foundation for national security is citizens who believe that the political system works. Being economically strong by creating more living wage jobs through education and economic freedom will enhance national security. Secondly, increased investment in cyber warfare capabilities will enable us to spend less on military hardware. Today, we spend only 1% of our defense budget on cybersecurity. Defending ourselves with keystrokes is better and cheaper than industrial-age tanks and bullets. Electronic borders are as important as physical borders. Build more code, not more bombs. Now, I spend most of my days evaluating risk and reward. So this economic vision has less risk and more reward than the current path we're on. Yes, there is risk that public education system can be expanded at the same time it is fixed. Increased economic freedom has to turn into more consumption that creates jobs. National security will have to rely on internal security, a strong economy, advanced technology, and not just the projection of industrial-age military power. These risks are real, but they're manageable, and they pale in comparison to the successful risk-taking that has made America great. We can maintain world leadership with firm foreign policy, economic strength, technology superiority. We must start down this new path now before it's too late. Like you, I love America. Our spirit, our sense of hope, and our belief that we can do almost anything and make the world better are gifts that we have been given that we must give to our children so they can give them to theirs. Now, you are all leaders. Use your leadership to rise up and support a new economic vision. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Kalo. I'm a law professor at the University of Washington in Seattle. So my big idea is that we're going to need a new federal agency to deal with robots. Okay? Now, if that sounds a little weird, I admit, right? Consider that historically speaking, a number of transformative technologies have led to new agencies, right? Trains did, cars did, vaccines did, right? Radio led to the Federal Radio Commission, which became the beloved Federal Communications Commission. And so this has happened before. In fact, I would argue that there's evidence that we already have seen that we need a robotics agency. And so I wanted to consider a couple. A few years ago, people were saying that Toyotas had a software glitch that made them speed up unexpectedly. You may recall the term sudden acceleration, right? So the Department of Transportation lacked the expertise to evaluate this claim. They literally ended up having to call NASA. Okay? So think about that for a second, right? They called NASA up on the phone and they said, hey guys, would you take a break from putting robots on Mars for a second to take a look at this Toyota, right? So ask yourself this, what will the Department of Transportation do when the first driverless cars start to crash into each other? So meanwhile, Amazon, my neighbor in Seattle, is asking the Federal Aviation Administration and saying, please let us have drones automatically deliver products to your house within minutes, right? The FAA doesn't know what to say, and so they say no, right? A Federal Robotics Commission, or whatever you want to call it, could help here. Such an agency could serve as a repository of expertise and foster innovation in robotics while minimizing the inevitable harms. I can tell you that other countries are getting serious about robotics policy. I've worked with folks in the EU and others on this. So if we don't get serious, I fear that this will be the first transformative technology since STEAM where America did not have a leading role. So that's my big idea, and whatever you might think of it, I hope we get a chance to talk about these issues over the next couple of days. Thank you.
Hi, don't want to lose my mic. I'm Jana Levin, and I'm an astrophysicist from Barnard College and Columbia University. Astrophysics is sort of the business of big ideas. It's kind of what we do for a living, but I realized after I accepted doing this that that wasn't really the kind of big ideas that was on demand. I think this is really more of a call for big ideas that have in mind improving the human condition. But I actually want to propose that from time to time, we question this presumption that the most important outcome of any human action is the improvement of our daily lives. You know, we're on this little planet, we're all under the same sky. The universe predates us by nearly 14 billion years, and it's going to be here a long time after our species has come and gone. And I think that if we consider accepting and admitting our cosmic insignificance, it gives us some perspective. And I think that, you know, I mean, if you try to visualize it, we're on this little rock. We're around for a blip in the history of the universe, and we're squabbling. And I think that it kind of puts that in perspective, and that kind of humility is useful. So my big idea is that every once in a while, we spend some time reflecting on our astronomical insignificance.
For our next big idea, I'd like to introduce you to a friend from Palo Alto, California, who's joining me on the dais. Hi, Henry.
My name is Henry Evans. I am a mute quadriplegic speaking to you from my bed in Northern California. I had a stroke 12 years ago, which is why I sound like R2-D2. It has often been said that if history doesn't repeat itself, it frequently rhymes. That is certainly true of the history of technological and social change in America. To begin, think back 100 years. Technological advances, like the airplane and the automobile, were rapidly changing our perceptions of time and space. Oh, and on a side note, 100 years ago, my stroke would have killed me. Now fast forward a century. Modern medicine has saved my life, and new technologies are once again changing our perception of space and time. Now the disabled like me, the elderly, and those people who are otherwise unable to travel are once again being given the opportunity to fully participate in society. By virtue of remote presence devices, I was recently able to effortlessly travel all over the world while I was lying in bed. This represents both a remarkable technological achievement and a significant leveling of the social playing field for all types of bedridden people. Let me give some concrete examples by briefly describing two such devices and their role in this historic societal transformation. The first device sits on the shoulder of someone you want to remotely visit, hence the name Polly, and swivels around in many directions under remote control by the user. It can be used by the bedridden to accompany and converse with friends and family on excursions. You hear what they hear and see what they see. Think about the implications for bedridden grandparents who want to be there for their grandchildren's precious such device is the Beam by Suitable Technologies. By virtue of the Beam, I was able to tour museums in Mountain View and San Francisco from my bed in Palo Alto. Beam is currently a commercial product and is the closest thing to walking I have experienced since my stroke. I was accompanied on some of the trips by a newly found quadriplegic friend, Mandvis, who participated from his home in Lithuania. When using beams, we were literally able to wander freely around the museum, using our head movements to drive. We didn't even run anybody over. We missed them. We were able to interact with visitors and learn about the exhibits. These are some pictures of me wandering through the Young Fine Arts Museum in San Francisco with Charlie Castillo. Famous museums in San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Chicago, London, England, New York, St. Petersburg, and Paris have expressed an interest in installing remote presence devices. And one of the advantages of traveling by remote presence devices, there's no jet lag. This isn't just an idea. It's happening now. So if you know any elderly or bedridden people, give them the gift and tell them that by 2024 they will be able to travel the world anytime they want. It reminds one of what Morpheus asked in The Matrix. How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. Please join us in making the whole world accessible once again to bedridden, elderly, and underprivileged people with this exciting new technology. Help us spread the word. Thank you.
Henry is with us, and he will be here the rest of the evening, and he will give office hours, which is one of our new initiatives, tomorrow afternoon, if you'd like to speak with him. So, thank you, Henry.
Good evening. My name is Alfre Woodard.
And I'm Lil Buck.
Our big idea is creativity is a scientific principle. All the laws of science depend upon it. It is as constant as numbers. But unlike numbers, it expresses the soul and expands consciousness. And like numbers, some of us surrender to it more readily than others. The creative impulse is in human beings like blood, which has different types, but is in every one of us. Creativity invented us, and we invented the word for it. This principle of science produces art. Art is not a luxury. Art is not collectible. To make art, to see art, to be art is our birthright. Art is the expression of the soul, the language of soul. What people would deny their young language?
I'm Jackie Bezos, and I work for the Bezos Family Foundation. Trillion, that's a big number, often associated with the national debt. But there's another place where that word pops up. Science tells us that in the first 5 years of life, trillions of neural connections are made, forming the foundation for all future learning. These connections are made through positive experiences with caring adults. No caring adults result in fewer connections and faulty brain architecture. Neuroscience findings like this all too often end up on a shelf or at best get published in a professional journal. Findings are rarely translated into everyday language and put into the hands of those who stand to gain the most. In this case, parents, particularly low-income parents. The foundation decided to take a stab at changing this. We partnered with IDEO.org to canvass the United States to understand the realities of parenting in poverty. Not surprisingly, all parents love their children. All parents want a better life for their children than what they had. But did they know they could change their child's trajectory? No. Did they want to know the science? Yes. We know we can't create change alone. We have partners ranging from leading neuroscientists to community organizations to retailers. And together, we are creating a national movement through a parent-facing campaign called Vroom. It's an onomatopoeia. It's a word all children say, and it connotes forward motion. During mealtime, bath time, and any time in between, Vroom delivers actionable tips and the science behind them. So without adding more time or spending any money, parents can be brain builders in their homes, in their neighborhoods, and on the go. We launched a pilot in April in South Seattle, a community where 65 languages are spoken. And we will pilot in 2 more communities this fall. We know, all of us here know, that all children are born with potential. But we also know they're not all born with opportunity. We plan to level the playing field, and that's our big idea.
Hello, I'm Alexander Reben, and I'm a roboticist and an artist. We're increasingly becoming surrounded by connected devices and things that are watching us and measuring us and all sorts of interesting ways. What if these devices were more curious about us? What if they wanted to find out more about humanity than they did want to find out about raw data? What if we took distributed computing and turned it into distributed wetware? For example, if you're in your home and your robotic pet comes along and asks you a hard question, would you want to answer it? Would you be engaged with it? Imagine you have a question that you want to ask the world. Would you answer such a question?
What is the last risk you took?
These are the types of questions and stories that we should be collecting, and our technology around us can help us do so. We can turn facts into stories and use devices like this to find out more about humanity. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mitch Landrieu. I'm the mayor of New Orleans, your city. Hi, Thomas. I should first begin by, yes, by thanking all of you for helping us rebuild perhaps one of the greatest cities that America has seen in a long time. And as we struggle in New Orleans to build back, we're not building back the way we were. We're building the city that we always should have been, and we're in the midst of a transformational time where we're rebuilding our educational system, our healthcare system, we're rebuilding our government, we're rebuilding a lot of stuff. But the big idea that has come to our attention is simply stated as this. We have to end violence on the streets of America as we know it, especially murders that are occurring every day between African-American boys and men who are being killed at catastrophic numbers that for some reason we don't really see. Since 1980, in the last 32 years, to 2012, as the numbers will have it, 626,000 American citizens have lost their lives on the streets of America. As Jackie said, that's a big number. I'd like to tell you how big it is. It's more than all of the American citizens we lost in all of the wars of the 20th century. And one of the things that has come to the fore has been that cities, which most people are living in now, can never really become what they want to become if the people there are not safe. Because if you don't have safety, you don't have peace. And if you don't have peace, you don't have freedom. I am in awe, Senator Mitchell, being in your presence and so many of you. Jeff, y'all had a talk about world peace and America being strong abroad. And on behalf of the mayors of America, I'd like to say we applaud you in your efforts and we continue to support you. But we would posture this, that America can't be strong abroad if it's not strong at home. And it certainly can't be peace abroad if there's not peace on the streets of America. And the big idea is to stop violence as we know it, especially murder in America. And I look forward to talking to you more about how we can find out how to get that done. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic magazine. I've actually asked Walter to do an interpretive dance based on my remarks now. And he's agreed to do it, but he's going to do it on the inside. So thank you. I've been coming to the Aspen Ideas Festival for a while. This is my 65th festival. In fact, they were fantastic during the Eisenhower years, by the way. People don't know that. A few years ago, I had this crucial insight about the nature of the festival, and that is that it's not called the Aspen Good Ideas Festival. It's just the Aspen Ideas Festival. And so it has somehow, in some haphazard way, devolved to me to present at this part of the opening session some ideas that many people who are short-sighted might consider, technically speaking, bad ideas. But before I do that, I want to tell you the best idea that I've ever heard in this tent, and it wasn't on the stage. It was a couple of years ago, and a couple of years ago you could see out the back of this tent, and I was sitting next to a guy named Dele Olojide, who is this fantastic Nigerian writer, and he's staring at Red Mountain across the way, and he leans over and he says, "Who lives in those houses up there?" And I said, "It's mainly the working poor." And he said, "Do people live in them all year round?" And I said, "Well, some yes and some no." And he said, "You know what we should do after the session? We should go up that mountain and we should turn that into a writer's colony." And I said, "That is a fantastic idea. I will be 80 to 100 feet behind you with your bail money." So I'm going to do something a little different in the brief moment I have here. I'm actually doing this without any safety harness. I'm going to throw away the bad good ideas or the good bad ideas that I was going to do because I've been inspired by something that I just heard to suggest an idea that I've always been a little bit hesitant to suggest. Some of the good bad ideas that I had, by the way, and this one was already rejected. If you've been on campus already, you see that there's a Mount Sinai Hospital skin cancer examination tent. My idea was actually the Atlantic magazine open flap prostate exam tent. But that one was shot down. Last year in this session, I made the argument against heterosexual marriage. This year, I had a whole argument prepared against gay divorce. But I've just been so inspired by David Bradley's presentation before. David is my boss, as you probably figured out. It wasn't just the presentation, the way he brought these issues to the forefront of our discussion. Earlier today, I shared this idea with him for the first time. Well, we were actually both getting high in the back of the Pepke building. Which is where David and I actually usually go to Door Hosier to get blazed, but they were having some seminar on climate change, so we had to go to Pepke. Yes, for the record, I just said that David Bradley gets blazed. I just want that noted. But the idea, and I think I have David's support on this, is this. So for the last 20 years or so, I've been covering the Middle East. And in the last 2 decades, things have gotten, as we all know, steadily worse, not only in the Israeli-Palestinian peace track, but all through the region. We've heard territorial solutions and power-sharing solutions, theological solutions, military solutions, and diplomatic solutions. But what we haven't talked about yet are the pharmacological solutions. And so I just want you to bear with me for just picture the following event taking place on the campus of the Aspen Institute. And really, David, I thank you for this. Imagine a tent called the Frito-Lay Bradley Isaacson Aspen Ideas Festival Middle East Peace Process Marijuana Tent, okay? And what we would do in this tent is we would bring all of the negotiators and all of the leaders from the Middle East, and we would bring them in this tent, and we would provide them with the really high-quality Aspen marijuana, not the crap from Denver, but the really good stuff, and we'd let them smoke it up for an hour, and then we would let them negotiate peace. I recognize that there are downsides to this plan. One possible downside is, of course, as many of you know, or make believe you don't know, potheads very often only want to discuss one subject, which is, of course, who was a better starship commander, Captain Kirk or Captain Picard. So a lot of the discussion would go in that direction. But the upsides are huge. The burst of creativity that might come from it, and most obviously the level of relaxation. Because in my observation in the Middle East over the last 20 years, people are very, very tense. And I really do believe that I could picture flying Netanyahu and Abu Mazen into Aspen and putting them in this tent, and within an hour, you'd see Bibi turn to Abu Mazen and say, "You know what we should do, man? We should sign a peace treaty." And Abu Mazen would say, "Totally sign a peace treaty. Do you have one?" And I said, "No, I don't have one. I used it for rolling paper." But wait, where's John Kerry? He's always got a peace treaty on him. So it's my wish, I believe if we carry this idea out, by late summer 2015, we will have a comprehensive peace in the Middle East. And if we don't, I will just blame the person I'm about to introduce to you now, the person who has to do all the damage control at the Aspen Ideas Festival, the maestro of the Aspen Ideas Festival, my friend and the next senator from the great state of Colorado, Kitty Boone. Where is Kitty?
If I'm not mistaken, there's some soccer balls in the audience. Does anybody see any? Can we bring one up here? You are not allowed to watch World Cup soccer while you're at the Aspen Ideas. Just don't tell me if you're going to. This is really cool. This is a socket ball. And if people will bounce these around, I don't think it's going to work fast, but if people will play with these for a second, and I'm going to throw one to you, Mitch, and pass it back and keep jugging it. It's the coolest thing. It's not an ordinary soccer ball. It's designed to capture and store kinetic energy that's generated when the ball moves. Sockets are used by children in countries where energy is scarce. Kids can play with the ball for about 30 minutes and then use the power in the ball to provide light for up to 2 hours. And in that ball is a light fixture. They can do their homework and study for 3 hours, and then they go out and play soccer again. What a concept that you would actually get physical education. Anyway, okay. Maybe we should just juggle it in our seats. Anyway. This is an innovative toy created by a small company called Uncharted Play, and it's replaced diesel power generators in some classrooms in Africa. And I want to thank Shell for bringing it to us, and you will be able to Not only can you play with these, but you'll also be able to see on a screen in our innovation gallery and other places how much energy you're generating when you play with it. So that's really fun. So we are officially launched. We actually launched, David, 3 days ago, just so you know. So before the 250 people came, getting a little stoned, we actually had an incredible program on health. And it was fantastic. So one of the innovations in the 10 years of the Aspen Ideas Festival is that we would go 10 days. And despite all worries, it didn't kill us yet. And we were really thrilled about that. It was a remarkable 3 days. And just as the people that we brought to Spotlight Health were remarkable, we expect the next week to bring even more remarkable thinkers and scholars and students. And speaking of students, you heard from Jackie Bezos, but one of the great things that the Bezos Family Foundation always does is bring scholars from both Africa and from states across the United States. Would the Bezos scholars stand up? These are all high school students in their junior years. These children with their teachers have won quite a competition, and one of the things that's happened over the last 10 years with these students is they've gone back to their schools and produced ideas festivals all over the country, and it's really been a remarkable program. We also will bring later in the week students from Denver and Los Angeles that are winners of the Aspen Challenge, which is another program that we launched last year and the Bezos Family Foundation has funded. That allows teams of students to actually solve real-world problems. And I think if some of you are still here when their second session, whoever said the second session wasn't great, you're really, David, was that you? It's really great, and one of the reasons is because those kids. Anyway, I have, despite all the depth and breadth of the ideas that you're going to hear, I do have some advice for the next week. First, wear your badge. No badge, no access. That's pretty easy. Download our app on your smartphones and look at our agenda online. I will promise you that already a couple of things have changed in your printed piece that just came off the press, and so that is a very smart place to do it. Microsoft has donated technology that's all over campus, so you can always check our agendas if you don't have smartphones, but definitely our app is fantastic and it's very easy to use. We've got some new initiatives this year that I hope and advise you to take advantage of because I think they're going to be great. One is deep dives, and across the week we're going to offer opportunities when some people feel they didn't get enough in a session to actually dive deeper in a particular session. For example, Julia Angwin on the subject of privacy, or this weekend, Jim Fallows and Charles Mann, who are two extraordinary journalists, as you probably know, who know a lot about coal and can talk about that in depth. Every afternoon, starting tomorrow, I guess with the exception of the 30th, we will offer office hours at 4 o'clock, and a number of our presenters who will be on the dais have offered to give their time and answer additional questions. We implemented this the last couple of days, and I think our speakers were swamped, and it's a really fun way for you to have a little bit more of an intimate opportunity to talk to somebody and ask more questions, and those are listed in your agenda. Every morning, we're offering something called Your Turn. And what's really fun about this is the engagement we have with, I think, fun, our policy program directors across the Institute who are here and going to engage you talking with them and their groups about important ideas that you would like to see in their specific arenas, whether it's the Middle East and technology, whether it's the world of work, whether it's gridlock in Washington, D.C. We want to hear from you. Those sessions in your agenda are called Your Turn, and they're every morning. We have a new bookstore location, and it's in the Health Center's gym on the far side of campus, where we'll have a food truck, thanks to PepsiCo, every single day. I think it's a great location, and please go ahead and use that. And finally, the last advice tonight. When we plotted the Ideas Festival, as we introduced in the beginning of tonight, of putting together a program with a theme of 2024, We sat down with the Atlantic and we really tried to imagine 10 years out, some pretty big questions. And what's going to happen with our civil liberties, given technologies? What's going to happen to our cultural identity as a function of changing demography? What is work going to look like 10 years from now when we don't even know when it's going to look like 5 years from now? How will we relate to machines, as you saw tonight? So as you pick from quite a feast, believe me, of possible conversations, treat yourself to something new. Explore ideas you know nothing about. Imagine new possibilities. That's what this festival is about. Welcome to Aspen Ideas Festival 2014.